You're listening to the Cash Podcast, creating affluence, success, and happiness with your financial surgeon, Adam Koch, President and Portfolio Manager at Libertas Wealth Management Group at libertaswealth.com.
Hello, everyone, and happy Monday. Today, I have Laura Cobb joining me from Estrela Consulting, and we're going to be talking about shopping for college with your teenager so that you can get the most bang for your buck. But before I formally introduce Laura, I have a couple housekeeping items to go through here. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. My hope is for you to learn a little bit more on each and every one of these episodes so that you become more successful, wealthier, happier, and above all, more educated than you were before you started listening today. So please come back often and subscribe. These episodes appear both on iTunes if you're a walker and listener in the car, or on YouTube if you're more of a watcher. And last but certainly not least, all links, visuals, charts, and additional educational resources are always available on our website at libertaswealth.com. Although today we aren't going to have any visuals, but we will have some links that will be included at the bottom in the information section below on YouTube. And if you are listening on iTunes, then you can kind of, feel free to come back to YouTube, hit the pause button, rewind. And of course, like I said, those links for more information will be available on YouTube as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Allow me to introduce Laura to all of you. All right, so Laura Cobb, she is a college planning consultant with Estrela Consulting. And prior to joining Estrela, she got a lot of hands-on experience with pre-college kids working as a school counselor. During her time in this role, she met a multitude of families, as you could probably imagine, and students, and provided them with guidance on the tough job of planning for college. Now, as a college planning consultant at Estrela, Laura works with those same families and students to turn what can oftentimes be an overwhelming process into a more manageable and maybe even a little exciting, imagine that, experience, kind of like finance, right? She's got a bachelor's in psychology from Kent State University and a master's in school counseling from The Ohio State University. She's an associate member of the Independent Educational Consultants Association, that's the IECA, a member of the Ohio Association for College Admission Counseling, and has been licensed in the state of Ohio as a K-12 school counselor for the last 13 years. She's a graduate of the IECA Summer Training Institute, which is an intensive hands-on training program designed for those seeking to establish an independent educational consulting practice. And by the way, the training curriculum offered is viewed to be some of the best available in the world for those entering the profession, I might add. She's also earned her certificate as an international university advocate through the National Association for College Admission Counseling. In addition to all her own professional development, she's facilitated webinars, led workshops with her local community, and she's been asked to present at both state and national conferences all over the country. Now, on a more personal note, Laura lives right here in Central Ohio with us, with her husband and 3 kids. She savors every little precious moment with her kids, whether it be through exploring nature or building your occasional pillow fort. On those rare but special date nights out, she and her husband can typically be found eating locally owned restaurants or belting out their favorite ballads at karaoke. In fact, she's going to be singing one of her favorites at the end of this episode, but you have to stay to the end. You have to stay to the end to hear it. But in all seriousness, Laura also she also serves at her church, participates in the work of area nonprofits, and in her free time, she enjoys watching her favorite sitcoms and relaxing on her front porch swing. Now, I'm not going to ask you to sing in all seriousness, but
okay, thank you.
Maybe for another day.
Another day, yeah.
Yeah, but I do have to ask you before we get into college savings, college planning, picking schools, getting the most bang for our buck. What are your top 2 favorite sitcoms right now? What are you watching these days? Everybody has been going through this whole pandemic, been stuck at home. I think that, everybody subscribes to any number of streaming services. So, what are you watching?
That's a really good question. So a while ago, even before the pandemic, I became a huge fan of The Office and Parks and Recreation. And so really the longest time ever since, they were on NBC. And I've tried to get into other sitcoms, but just none compare. So I just literally have The Office or Parks and Recreation on all the time. And it makes me feel good. I mean, if you have something that makes you laugh and feel good, then go for it. Now they used to have it on Netflix. I think, I forget where it was, no longer. So now you have to go to Peacock Peacock,
That's
but I
right.
don't even do that. I bought them all on DVD just in
Oh,
case.
wow. You
Like
even own them. You're
I
not messing
own them.
around.
I'm serious. Like I'm in this. So if you have never watched The Office or Parks and Recreation, you out there, you've
So I
got
think
to.
I've seen
Feel
one
good.
episode, maybe, or like a half episode of Parks and Rec, and then I think I've watched bits and pieces of The Office. In fact, Kim here at our office, there is no shortage of fun making and poking about how I've never watched The Office, or the other one is Seinfeld. I've never seen an episode of Seinfeld either. I know,
Okay.
I know.
Okay. It's okay.
I've always
That's
say that
good.
I didn't start watching TV until they invented DVR because I couldn't make it through the commercials. But now I realize really it's not even that. It's that I'd rather watch them all from beginning to end and binge them because I don't even have the patience to wait till next week to wait for the next episode. But yeah, and there's that.
I feel you. I feel it. That's why I have them on DVDs. Just
There, you own
keep.
them. They're all yours now. All right. Well, let's get started in the meat of the material here. But before I do, you mentioned right before we went on air that you had a warning. What's
Oh,
that all about?
okay. So really, we're talking about today zeroing in on the cost of colleges. So there's a lot of information here, and some of it I didn't even know until I became a college planning consultant. I knew bits and pieces as a school counselor, but when I would present financial aid nights to my families, I never went this deep because it is a little complicated when you really are trying to figure out how much you're going to pay before you apply. So the warning is this may feel like you're drinking from a fire hose, and I apologize, but the good thing is this is recorded, so you can go back and listen. But this information is so valuable that I want to give it to you all and not cheat you from any of it, because what I know is what I'm going to share essentially today. So just be patient. Eventually it'll sink in and you'll get it. Another heads up is I sometimes refer to college, university, school. Those words are interchangeable in my
Got it.
world. So if I say college, university, or school, it just means institution of higher education. So note that.
Sounds much
Also,
shorter. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it just changes up the words a bit. And then I might say your child or your family, but really, Adam, this information is great for grandparents, any adult that's in a student's life who's trying to help them get ahead and really plan for this process. And even the students themselves, which we'll get into that a little bit later, but really students, if you're in high school, you could listen to this now, and this would be helpful for you. So this applies to anybody who's in this process of preparing for shopping for colleges. And then finally, I have notes because this is a lot.
It's a lot of information.
And
Yeah.
I want to make sure I get it to you just right. And so a lot of it includes some numbers. So I will be looking at my notes, but that's just so that I make sure I get everything to you guys.
Sure. No, it's appreciate you giving away all this information for free. Obviously, if it's obviously it's a lot of information, but if it were easy, you wouldn't have a job then, right?
It's true. And it's funny because this is only like a small portion of what I do.
Right.
And so, and not all families need or want to know all of it, and that's fine. But, I'm assuming the people who are listening right now, they do want to know. So yeah, I'm happy to help with this.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's like when Amber and I, your colleague Amber and I spoke back in the summer of last year about kind of a different silo of what you do at Estrela, for those people who are either feeling lost in the process of shopping for schools, looking for the best school for their kid, or you're just looking for a consultant to kind of hold your hand and walk you along the way because you want to be proactive and you don't just want to arbitrarily pick a college, but you actually want to do it with some intention. This is going to be call it silo number 2. I don't know if there's as if there's a 3 or not. I guess you'll tell me later, but with the interest of the fire hose in mind, my first real question of the day is what is it about shopping for colleges that makes it so different from how we shop for everything else in our lives?
Yeah, it's a great question because that's why we're here, right? Why?
Yep.
How is it different? So I'll just start. There's this really good quote that just totally sums it up. So the quote is from a book called "The Price You Pay for College," and it's by Ron Laber. It just came out within the last year. And so he says, I have never come across a consumer decision that inspires more confusion and emotion than this one. And he's referring to shopping for colleges. And so that's just perfect because really
sounds accurate. Yeah.
it's confusing. And mostly because the way that, you look at colleges, you visit them, and then after you apply, so essentially after you've kind of made the purchase in a sense, you find out what the final price is, what the bottom line price is for your family. That's not how the regular world works with other purchases. So there's that confusing part to it. And then there's the emotions. These are
Very
our children. These are our children or our grandchildren or our little people in our lives who we've, been a part of every stage of their life. And we want it to go well for them. This is their future. So I think there's some fear there that if we don't get them into the right college, that they will somehow come tumbling down the social class ladder and that
Right.
everything will be messed up for them, or one small misstep and they won't be successful. So there's a little bit of that fear. And we know that that's not true. It's just not, but I think we kind of hold on to some of that. And then two, there's sometimes some guilt that maybe you didn't save enough, the guilt that maybe you don't make enough money to be able to save for your child. And whoever is out there and wherever you're at, it's okay. Like, do not feel that guilt. I'm going to tell you that. But I think we kind of just hold on to that. We hold on to those feelings. And so, Adam, when we have the confusion and we have the big feelings, and we let that take the wheel, that's what leads to some poor decision making. And that's what makes this so hard and difficult.
Well, you've got the people who maybe feel bad about not making enough, the people who don't feel good about saving enough. And then I imagine at least a lot of the people we run into are people who maybe make more than enough, but are frustrated that they can't get enough because they didn't save enough. Because, I always say it's like, this is kind of a cliche analogy, but it's like the, airline attendant, when you get ready to take off on a plane, that I always tell people you have to take care of your own retirement needs before you take care of your kids' college. So, when the airline attendant says that, they're in the case of a sudden drop of air cabin pressure, oxygen masks are going to fall from the ceiling, put the mask on yourself first, then your kid. It's very much applicable here, but it's frustrating. So, how do you suggest families start? What are the first steps they should take?
Yeah. Well, first of all, identify those feelings, talk to yourself and really be really with yourself. But truly, what information can you get yourself? So I'm going to warn you again that the question that I get from families is, where do we start? Where do we begin? And it's kind of a long answer. So really, it's divided into two main parts. One is just understanding the terminology and what vocabulary words you're now going to be learning. And what, this is just a whole different ball game when we're talking about the terms that, that you have to encounter when paying for college, when talking about financial aid. So understanding the vocabulary, but then the whole other side of it is then these colleges are businesses. They have a wide variance in the way that they price their product and also the way that they can discount it occasionally. So understanding and awareness that it's not one size fits all. There's not a cookie cutter way in which these colleges are doing this. So first you have to understand the basic terms, and then you understand how colleges are even doing this. So a very basic thing you could do before you're learning all this is just look up some sticker prices, the list price of colleges. And even in Ohio, Adam, it's just wild. You got $18,000 per year on the low end, and then you have $78,000 per year on the high end. What? So
who's the 78? I've got to know. Is it Oberlin College?
Yeah. Or Kenyon. I forget. It was one of the two. Yeah, I think you got it. It was either Oberlin. It was Oberlin.
That's where I grew up. I cheated. I don't actually just know that. Yeah.
You're a genius. Oh, good job. You could do
I grew up there.
So look at these prices. There's going to be sticker shock. I probably just shocked some people right now. They're like, what? Which one's the $18,000 per year? So, sticker shock, right? then though, I think when people hear this or they hear like that's how much these places cost, I think we usually have this like internal conversation that says something like this. Well, it's 78,000, but I doubt that we would pay that much, or it's going to be lower because my neighbor's daughter, went there and they didn't pay that much. And it's just like these thoughts, because again, it's very confusing. So then we though say to ourselves, but how is that actually going to happen? Is that going to happen? Is my kid the same? Or just again, confusing. So that's where we need to understand, is it going to be lowered and how? What's the mechanism? So these are the two main terms for today: need-based aid, need-based financial aid, and merit-based financial aid.
Okay.
So the need-based is a little confusing. We're going to start with that one first. So these are the two ways in which that 78,000 or whatnot could be lowered. So the need-based aid is based on a family's income and their assets, very basically. I mean, there's nuances, but your income and your assets, and it's the parents and the students. You find this out by filling out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And then this form that eventually you will fill out for real. There's a practice one I'll tell you about in a moment, but you fill it out about a year before your student's going off to college. And they look at all kinds of your information and then produce a number at the end. And this number, very important, it's called your estimated family contribution, EFC.
Okay, gotcha. I've heard that before. Yeah.
Estimated family contribution. So it is as it sounds. It's estimated. They're estimating it, and it's your family's contribution. This is what the government thinks your family can afford to pay each year for college, based on you entering in all that financial information. So you take that estimated family contribution, and that is what the government believes you can afford. So truly, that information is going to be sent to the colleges your students applying to. But what you can do on the front end is you can look at some of those sticker prices and, okay, 78,000 per year. And if that magical number, your EFC is say 50,000, then you take 78,000 minus 50,000, you get 28,000 per year is your need. Okay, so that's another term, your financial need. So this is where families tend to get excited because they say, wow, we have $28,000 in need. So that's great because we're not going to have to pay that. Like somebody's going to cover that, like government or the college or not. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes that need is completely covered, Adam. But unfortunately, here's a whole other confusing piece, which is that many colleges can't afford or they haven't prioritized covering all that need. So now we have a new term called a gap. That's kind of a made up word that we've made up in this profession, but there's a gap. It's a gap. Yeah. So, and the gap is what your family's financial need is, subtract what the college could actually give you. And that's the gap that's not being covered by anybody. So I know this is a lot, but
yeah, it makes sense
to understand that what you'll be paying is your family's estimated family contribution. The government said you could pay that plus the gap. So you're going to now have to pay for that using your savings or student savings or your income, maybe that you have extra
cash flow,
or cash flow loans. So that is indeed what you're going to have to pay. And that's hard for people to think about because I think they think the EFC is that's all they're going to have to pay, the estimated family contribution, but it's not. There's that additional piece. And so I told you, if you wanted to figure this out now, you can. Of course, the closer it is to your child going off to college, the better, because your figures will be a little more accurate. But there is something called the Federal Student Aid Estimator. I'll give you the website, but then the link will be, like Adam said, in the details below the YouTube video.
Okay, so I got you.
studentaid.gov/aid-estimator, studentaid.gov/aid-estimator. This is like a practice FAFSA. You can go here and do all this and get an EFC just to see if you want maybe what your family might qualify for. So
just to make sure I understand. So we've got the EFC, which is the difference between what you have, or at least the government thinks you have to pay, and then what, the actual cost is. And then we have the gap, which is the actual difference between what you have and how much college is going to cost net after any discounts. Is that about right?
Kind of. So I know it's so confusing. So the EFC is what the government thinks you can pay.
Yep.
And then you take the sticker price, like what it costs to go to the college normally, and you subtract the EFC from that to get what the need is. Like what do you need to make this up? But then the gap is if the college isn't able to meet your full need, the gap is that extra money that you now have to tack on to your estimated family contribution. And that's what you have to pay. And you might have said that, but it's just
college is 30 grand. EFC is 10. I have 10. The gap is 10.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, but yeah, you
could have made that simpler, but
you have 10, meaning the college is going to give you 10, then the gap is 10, because now you have to make up that gap. Yes. Yeah.
So we all have 1/3, and the last third is unaccounted for, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. But still very confusing even as I'm saying it, but this is literally how it works. There's nuances in there. I'm trying to make it as basic as possible, but, that was all just need aid. So yes, your sticker price could go down a tad or a lot if you have some financial need. Okay. So that's the one way it can go down. The second way I told you was merit aid, merit scholarships. We call them scholarships. That's, the street term. So the street term, on the streets, we call them scholarships. So essentially on my streets, this is free money though, Adam. So this is good stuff. Free money.
I like free money. Who doesn't like free money?
You don't have to pay this back. So this is for being awesome though. So awesome academically, so your students' GPA, your students' test scores. That's typically what they're going to use to determine their awesomeness. Awesome athletically. Like did you grade at a sport in your high school, you could get some merit scholarships for that. And then leadership, maybe you've had some leadership roles or community service, like above and beyond. So awesomeness. So that's basically the definition and pretty much most of what you need to know for what merit aid is.
For merit.
Okay?
Okay.
You got need aid, financial need aid, merit aid. So that's what they are. But then the big thing, Adam, which I think is the deep part that most people don't understand is how is this playing out at the colleges? So we talked about, you got to understand the terms, but then you also have to understand how are colleges using this? How is this being applied in real time in the real world? So there's differences. There's 4,000, by the way, over 4,000 colleges in the US alone. So just add some more confusion into that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Amber, my colleague, she had the episode with you. She goes a little more into like, how do you figure out which college might be a good fit? We're just talking money today. So I can have a whole nother episode for that.
For sure.
Amber. But truly of the 4,000 plus, we already know there's a huge difference in the pricing to begin with, the sticker prices. So that $18,000 a year, the low end in Ohio, that's for a public, you have a public in-state university. The 78,000, as you mentioned, was for a private university. And so, there's differences between public and private. There's also differences, like if you live in Ohio and you want to go to University of Michigan, or UNC.
I don't know why you'd ever want to do that, but sure.
I know. And I'm a Buckeye. So why would I even say that? Why did I say that word? Bad.
You're forgiven. You're forgiven.
So, I'm forgiven. Okay.
Might break the recording, but we'll see.
Everything. Shut it down. So the thing is if you want to go to, that place up north or to UNC Chapel Hill, you are now an out-of-state student at an in-state university, and you pay actually even more than, even more. And sometimes in both of those cases, actually with those two schools, you're going to pay more than you even pay at a private university.
In-state. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I will dispel one myth that people are confused about sometimes. You don't pay anything more for a private university if you go out of state.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if you go to Carnegie Mellon, you pay the same amount as if you lived, in state and in Pennsylvania than if you lived in Ohio. So there's no difference there. But just know that if you want to go to an out-of-state public school, you are sometimes going to pay more than any private school.
Got it. So the distinction is public. If it's a public state university, then basically you're being charged a premium to come into that state and go to school there instead of in your home state.
Yes. Yes. And
if it's private,
states,
they don't care.
And they don't care. Yeah. They want anybody
to take your money. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you will see like reciprocity, we call it, like Michigan State actually loves Ohio students, and they will give something called a Spartan grant that really reduces the price for Ohio students to be able to come there. So some, public out-of-state universities is a good idea, but some, so it's just the
depends.
Whole point is it just depends, and it's confusing even to begin with. But then we look at sticker price, all this variation. And then also there's a lot of variation in how that need aid and the merit aid is actually given. And it's just confusing. But the good news is that we have data, like real numbers, Adam. We have them, they're there. You just have to know how to find them. So I'm going to tell you right now, this is probably one of my not my secrets, but it's just like a thing.
Secrets you're giving away today, though.
Like secrets, yeah. It's a thing that I didn't know about until I came into this role. So it's called
cheat
the
code.
common cheat. Yeah, this is cheat code. It's right down.
Cheat code.
It's called the common data set.
Okay.
It's a weird term, but what it is it's a standardized form that colleges fill out at the end of every application cycle, where they basically say, like, they put it all out there. They say, this is who gets in, as in like GPA, test scores, what we're looking for. This is who we admitted this year. But also, this is who got the money and how much money. And was it a lot of need aid, or was it more merit aid, scholarships? So it's just all out there. It's all out there. So you can access this by Googling a college name and common data set, but don't do that. There's a website called collegedata.com. Go there, and they're just wonderful people.
It's all there.
I need to find these people and shake their hands, because they have just put it all into a searchable database for you to access for free. And, I don't know them, but they're wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, we'll post that in the
we'll
info
post
below
that,
too.
Right? Because I use that. That's almost exclusively, rather than going into the common data. Who wants to do that? So go to collegedata.com and you'll be able to look up a college's name. And we're just going to start with need aid right now, just to keep it similar to how we began. So need aid, you want to find out at a college what percentage of a student's need is typically met. Remember how we talked about that gap?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We don't want a gap. If we can narrow that gap down, we want to as much as we can. So at a college, what percentage of the student's need is normally met? So that's one. Number two, how many students that previous year had their need completely met? No gap. How many students? So they'll say what percentage for that. And then, does this college only help with need aid? So that's the tricky one.
Good to know, yeah.
That there are a lot of colleges out there that don't give out merit scholarships. They only help with financial need. So I'll give an example. Duke. I had a lot of students interested in Duke recently. So Duke, you go on to collegedata.com, you will see that it's 76,000 per year.
Wow.
Sticker price, I know. And you will find that they do meet 100% of a student's need.
Wow.
So sticker price, $76,000 per year, minus your family's estimated family contribution. So let's just say $50,000 a year, equals $26,000 a year is your need. That's your need.
Okay.
Duke will meet it all. That's, at least they say so. That's what they record as having been done. So there's no gap. So if you are a family that has some need, you could feel good applying to Duke, knowing that they would somehow give you that need aid that you have demonstrated that you have. So then the other thing to know about Duke, though, is they are one of those universities that just doesn't typically give out merit scholarships. So as a business, Duke, their priority is to help students who have financial need. It's not a priority to them to give out merit scholarships. So yeah, and I will say of the, I said there's about 4,000 universities in the US alone. There's around 80 around 80 that will meet 100% of a student's need. So that's a good thing.
It's a small number, but yeah.
Well, I know. There may be some more, but of the most commonly known ones, there's about 80 that will meet 100% of a student's need. But then just know that many of them also are like Duke, and they just don't have that priority to give merit scholarships. So this is just awareness. There will be no quiz afterwards.
Good to know, though. Yeah.
Just an awareness. And I like Duke. Duke's a great school. So I'm not.
I was just going to say, it's not that you don't apply there. It's just,
it's just
good to know.
Yeah. Yes. And truly, Adam, sometimes families, and I've had students apply to Duke recently. I just make them aware, and then they know, and then usually the conversation goes like this. Well, if our student gets in, which by the way, it's really hard to get into Duke, then we will, if it's their dream to go there, then we will figure it out, which is tricky. Like, how are you gonna figure that out? But I leave that to them to decide if it's going to be worth it for their student to go there or not. And so it kind of is along those lines. Although I've had some families say, oh no, then sorry, we're going to not apply there or to another school like that. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. And I know one question that maybe some of your viewers might have is, so like a school like Duke, if they're meeting 100% of a student's need, is that all with free money?
That was going to be my next question, actually. Yeah.
Oh, Adam. Okay.
Yeah.
Ask
So like if it meets 100%, then is that scholarships and grants, or, and that's it, or is it more than that? You mentioned need-based only, but go ahead.
Yeah. And how you phrase that, I really like that, because again, scholarships and grants are free money. We want that. We don't have to pay that back. So this is bad news. I'm so sorry. But of those 80-ish colleges that do meet 100% of financial need, there's only about 15 of them that do so. I know. But this is not all bad news, people. It's going to be just fine. But you just need to be aware of this. Only about 15 that package that aid, that provide that aid with zero loans or low loans, they call it. So no loans or low loan schools. So there's about 15. And the rest of them do generally include some type of loans within meeting your need. But that's this could be a whole nother episode, I guess, which is that student loans, like, how do colleges even get away with calling those financial aid? They're not lowering the
price. Here's some debt.
You have to pay it back. I get it. They're trying to help so that the student doesn't have to pay it right now, or the parents don't have to pay it right now, but you eventually have to pay it back, and a lot of times with interest. So one of the links I'm going to have Adam include is this financial aid expert guy that I often will read. I read his blog articles. His name's Mark Kantrovitz, but I'm just going to throw this quote out there because I want you guys to hear it.
I love quotes.
You love quotes? Okay, great.
Oh, I collect them. So fire away.
Yeah, if somebody says it just right, I want to share it with the world. Okay, so Mark says, when a college claims that student loans are financial aid, it's like a car dealership claiming that a new car is free because you can finance the purchase with a zero down, zero interest auto loan.
That's funny.
So the car's free, people. It's free. Oh, wait, you have to pay back the money.
I'm a car guy, and I immediately knew where that quote was going when you started. I was like, that's funny. That's funny.
I mean, it's so true. And there's a lot of things about this whole college search and, paying for college process that I just find completely baffling, but it's so true. And so, it's food for thought, right? Not much we can do about that. But really know that sometimes when your need is being met, it's going to be met with loans. But if you're curious of what 15 colleges are doing it with zero loans or low loans, just two to throw out there. In Iowa, there's a really cool school called Grinnell. I point them out because their acceptance rate, like you'd have a decent chance of getting in there. Some of the other 15 are like, really low acceptance rate. So Grinnell in Iowa, and then Washington and Lee in Virginia.
Heard of them, yeah.
Also. So again, like the acceptance rate, like they aren't as competitive as some of the other schools on the list. So that was all need aid. Bottom line is colleges are businesses. So if they want their priority to be, we give a lot of need aid, that's what they do. If they want to make it with loans, that's what they do. So it's more just awareness. But then the final part to this huge answer that I've just now given you is
that's so good.
But I think this is probably what most listeners are going to want to know is, how is the merit aid being given out at these colleges? Because I know a lot of the families I work with, they don't have a lot of financial need. Like we fill out the FAFSA or we fill out the estimator, and then they find out there's not much, they don't have a lot of financial need.
Right.
So then we have to do our shopping with the lens of which colleges are going to give their student merit aid, a lot of merit scholarship money. So we go back to collegedata.com, the good old website, and we're going to look for three things again. So it comes in threes here. Does this college even offer merit aid?
Yep.
I'll look at that first.
Cross them off. Yep.
Yeah, because we know that there are quite a few that don't. Number two, what percentage of the students who are applying are receiving merit aid? And number three, what is the average amount given? Is it like $1,000 or is it $20,000 a year? And, you know, depending on the college, sometimes it can be in the tens of thousands. So here's another dream crusher, I guess I want to say.
Oh, jeez.
Terrible news today.
Yeah.
So again, like I see families get really excited when they enter this process.
We're just crushing dreams one podcast at a time.
I know, but yeah, I said, at least you said in my intro, I try to make this exciting. I mean, it's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Didn't see if it's happy,
You
exciting.
got my attention.
Exciting. So the thing is that a lot of families will assume my kid gets great grades and they have decent test scores, maybe in the 30s for ACT. So they're certainly going to get merit scholarships at every college that they apply to. Why would they not? And I feel your student deserves that money. I am 100% with you. But as we kind of already talked about a little earlier, some colleges don't give any merit scholarships. So we're talking any of the Ivy League schools, they do not. You apply to Harvard if your student is lucky enough to get in. I mean, it's a hard thing just to get in.
Sure.
You will be paying that list price, that sticker price, unless your family has financial need. So they are one of those schools that meets 100% of need, but no merit aid. And then some other examples, you got Northwestern, they're not Ivy League, but zero merit aid, Johns Hopkins, Duke, Tufts, NYU. So
the big
these
name schools, it's almost like, and wonder if that's part of the reason why you hear about them so much is that, it doesn't matter how smart you are, you're not getting any money unless you need it.
Yeah, perhaps. Yes. And I mean, and the thing is with these schools, so there's this second book that I'm just going to plug and that's it. I promise. Yeah. It's called Who Gets In and Why. And this is by Jeff Salingo. And so he calls those schools, Adam, he calls them sellers. So these schools are the sellers because they have a product that very easily is just sold. You not need to
buy it.
Yeah. You don't need to entice. I mean, you have kids lining up around the block trying to get into these schools. So you don't need to entice anybody. So these are the sellers. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense that these schools aren't offering merit scholarships because everybody who gets in has a 4.0 plus GPA and near perfect test score. So it's not fair. I'm not saying this is fair, but it does kind of logically make sense. Who are they going to give the money to? Everybody is kind of equally in the same position.
Right.
So those are the sellers. We want to focus on what he calls the buyers.
They're buying the students. Looking for students.
Yeah, I know. This is so like, what are these words?
That makes sense though.
I respect this person. He's a great, he's just done so much research in his life and he's a journalist. So point is he calls them buyers because they are buying essentially the students. But as weird as that sounds, it's a good set of schools to be looking into. And there's a lot of them. There's so many. And the idea is they're trying to get their best, the brightest class to be able to have each year. And so here's the collegedata.com part. So if you want to know at these buyers, what chance does your student have of getting some merit scholarship money?
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is you go and you look and you see what at that particular school is the middle 50% for test scores and for GPA. So like of the students who were admitted in the previous year, who's in the middle 50%? Like is the GPA 3.8, let's just say. Okay, if your student's higher than that in the top 25%, then that's typically where they're going to see merit scholarships come in and the highest. Sometimes the middle 50%
makes sense.
Scholarships, but you have to kind of be above average for that particular college to get the money. Same thing with test scores. Look at the middle 50%. You usually have to be slightly higher to be getting that money. So there's that, but then there's also just generally, if let's say your student isn't even, maybe they're just a freshman and you don't quite know what their final GPA or their end of junior year GPA is because they're so far away.
Still working on it. Yeah.
Still working on it. You can look, there's a data point on collegedata.com that just says what percentage of students at this school are getting money each year. So you can see how much of a buyer are they, how much. So anything that's 30% or higher, so 30% or more of the students, which doesn't sound that high, but I'm just telling you, trust me, if it's 30% or higher of the students are getting merit aid. And the other thing to add to that is on college data, it's actually saying these students are getting the aid, the merit aid, and they have no financial need. So families I work with tend to like that. Interesting. There because we can say, we know you probably don't have financial need, but how many of those students are getting the money, the merit money? So look at that. And if, like if you have a 30% or higher, that's good. I'll tell you at the schools that give zero, it's either zero or it's like 0.0001. Students get
something, some metric at the bottom of the spreadsheet. Yeah.
Half of a student is getting some money. So so know that anything closer to 30 is good. So examples of those buyers that are like that, you have Tulane, Loyola Marymount is a good one. Right here in Ohio, Case Western Reserve gives quite a bit of money. They're above 30%. In Indiana, we have Butler University. They give above 30, to more than 30% of students. Southern Methodist. So you notice these are, mostly the private colleges, but they tend to be the ones that have to bring that sticker price down because they're already so high. So they're giving to above 30%. So I will say one more school. It's kind of a unicorn, so to speak. Denison right here in Ohio. So not only are they a buyer, but they're also kind of a seller, and they're kind of like in between. So they're a buyer in the sense that they give, this past year, they gave to 35% of their freshman class that they had no financial need, but they gave to 35%. And it was on average $20,500 a year. So that's a big chunk of money.
Big chunk of money, yeah.
But not only that, at Denison, they meet 100% of a student's financial need. So they give need aid, they give merit aid. They're just very giving. They're a lovely school. So perhaps if you're in the situation where you have some financial need and your student also, academically talented, Denison might be a good choice because you'll probably get some of each. So bottom line is, this is a lot.
Yeah.
That was super long.
But what we're talking about, I feel like, is again, not just with this episode. And maybe what I'll do is I'll also link the other episode we did last summer. And I think we'll probably keep this up where we'll do 1 or 2 a year specifically on this topic of planning for college, because I do think it's so important and so confusing. It's just like a spider web you have to get through, to where obviously there's a reason, your business exists, Estrela exists because there's a need for it. And I think what we're really talking about here, if we scan up to 30,000 feet, is understanding that school's an investment, not unlike buying a stock. If you want to go to school and you want to make sure it's the right fit, of course, but you want it to be a good investment at the end of the day. And you want, like you said earlier, you said get the best bang for your buck, zeroing in on costs, but it's got to be worth it at the end of the day. So if these schools are giving away for people who've done well in school and worked hard, giving away enough money to the point where they're not paying anything. I mean, talk about a great investment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really getting, and even helping your child, like if your child's not the one listening to this, helping them understand that this is an investment in, yeah, I mean,
crucial.
There's a lot there, even just having basic financial literacy this can all be a really good teachable many moments for your child as they're considering this. Yeah.
We need a fireside chat with 3 adults and 3 kids.
Yeah.
Just set up microphones and go at it. But here's a question for you. Let's just say, because I hear this a lot at my office. What if a family knows, whether it's because of friends in the neighborhood or, they just know because of what they make, per year, that they do really well for themselves, but they know for a fact they're not going to qualify for any need-based financial aid. They'll say to me, should I even bother filling out the FAFSA?
Right.
Or the CSS, for instance, if it even applies? What would you say to those people?
Yes. Yeah. And the CSS profile, that's good. I forgot to mention that because I didn't want to overwhelm everyone, but
it's too late.
Adam said the CSS, I'll just quickly say what that is so that people aren't completely confused. So the CSS profile is just like a separate additional financial aid application that about 200 universities use in addition to the FAFSA. So essentially what Adam is saying is that I've had this question too. A lot of my family shouldn't even fill out the FAFSA and if applicable, the CSS profile, because what's the point? So I have about 4 reasons that I always just I'll send off to my family. So the first one is that don't be so sure. You might at the $78,000 a year school qualify for need aid, maybe not at the $18,000 a year school, right? So it just depends on what the sticker price is of the school to begin with. So that's number one. Yes, it's a pain to fill out these forms, but
that's why they don't want to do it, by the way. It's such a pain in the butt,
Who wants to do that? So here's some paperwork.
If you've done it once, you don't want to do it twice. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. And not to mention, you do need to fill these out every year. Your students in college. So it's like now you're on the train. So you got to keep going.
Yep.
So there's
go ahead.
That reason, just do it. Secondly, colleges just generally like to know your business. So they feel that they would like you just they want to see all the cards. So it works well for you when you do it. It creates like some nice openness between you and the college financial aid office. So then there's that to kind of, somewhat of a reason.
Transparency.
And I don't know who cares about that too much, but you care, but really I get it. So that might be a half of a reason, not really a whole reason. Number 3 or 2.5 is that a lot of times we'll see this verbiage on the college's websites that say you're not even eligible for merit scholarships if you don't fill out the FAFSA and CSS profile. So again, they're really trying to get your information so that and I will say, it's not all for bad. They want to be able to help you if they can, especially at those private universities that use the CSS profile. If they have some grant money that they can give you because they have a large endowment, they want to give it to you generally. So that's, again, they're requiring it even just to get merit scholarships. But then number 4, my final reason is that you might not think right now that you want your student to have a federal loan. Mm-hmm. But I will say you might change your mind, especially when you see what remaining amount it needs to be paid for by your family. So the only way that they'll be eligible for a federal student loan is if you fill out the FAFSA. So
they want to know the students still going to school, that they're doing well, that get an update, I assume. I mean, they're giving away money. So, and then, economic hard times, there's always that possibility. It's been, since 2007, 8, 9 that we've had a big, call it a normal recession in this country. I don't really count COVID because it was, it started and it was over with so quickly. So, you never know what might happen in the future, and you don't want your kid in the middle, to be in the middle of school and to be declining loans. If there's nothing wrong with having that available, I guess, but just not using them. Right.
Yes. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. Yeah. Very good point, Adam. Yes.
What about full rides? That's my favorite. My son got a full ride, And I feel like we hear that all the time where my neighbors, sisters, cousins, kids, hairdresser, got a full ride to college. How often do you actually see this, being that you deal with, college or pre-college kids all day long? How common is it?
Yeah, it's like, I will say, in the past, even 20 years ago, it was more common. So yes, it was happening, and it still is happening, Adam, but it's not, I would go
Not
track
common.
down that person and find out, like, really, what was it? Because sometimes what we call a full ride isn't really a full ride nowadays. So sometimes students will get full tuition scholarships, and that
hmm
is sometimes a thing, sometimes a thing, but that's just paying for tuition, and not all the other things,
Right.
room
Room
and
and
board,
board's not cheap.
room and board. Yeah. And I should say, and I forgot to mention this. Oops. So
No, you're
all,
fine. I was
all
just
this
thinking about how
here, I'm
when
glad
I
you
was
brought
in
this up.
college, it was a long time ago. I went to college
Yeah.
and tuition at Ohio State was only $4,000 a year, but that was some of the most expensive Lucky Charms I ever ate in my life. At
Yeah.
like
Right.
8 to 10 grand a year. That's
That's
why I
right.
became an RA, so I could have free Lucky Charms and salad bar, I guess. I don't know.
Yes. Guys, I didn't know you were an RA.
I
Very
was,
good,
yeah,
Adam. Very good.
I
You can
was.
a lot of times get free room and board by doing that. So
Amazing.
that is
Yes.
a pro tip right there from
And
a
a,
pro
and a, and a no
himself.
roommates.
No
Room to
roommate.
yourself. It was great.
Best of both worlds. So the thing I forgot to say, which I'm kicking myself for not, which is, it's just
Oh, you're fine.
tiny, but still, is that anytime I was talking about sticker prices, the 18,000, 78,000 per year, that was just including tuition, fees, room and board.
That's everything.
Those are the direct costs. It was including everything.
Okay.
But sometimes people or websites will add in transportation costs, cost of living, miscellaneous
Parking. Yeah.
clothing. I mean, I guess parking. Yeah. Sometimes that's included in the fees. So my point is that just have it be out there that my numbers were the direct costs, the tuition, fees, room and board, anything that's going to cost you to fly out to California. If you go there, that varies based on your situation.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
go to Ohio State, you live in Columbus, you're not paying for flying. So my point is just when you listen and think, this was all direct costs. But to answer your question, that
Sorry, go ahead.
there are some full rides, but it just isn't that common. And when it does happen, when everything's paid for, tuition, fees, room and board, it's usually a competitive scholarship offered by the college that has a separate application. You have to fill that out, essays, and it's good. You should absolutely go for it if you can, and if it exists at the colleges you're applying to. But then there's usually one round of competition interviews, a second round, and then maybe a handful of students get that full ride scholarship. It does exist, but it takes a little more work to be able to go out and seek that out. Whereas all the other scholarship money we've been talking about up until now has been automatically awarded just for applying and just based on GPA and test scores. So, I mean, that is good, but it also is good to go after those extra scholarships as you can. Just be aware that they're not that common as maybe it sounds like.
Take advantage of everything you can. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now there's some things that we can't take advantage of because we're either born with it or we're not, right? And that's athletic scholarships. So I mean, similar to the full ride scholarship, many of us have heard the statistics about how few kids make it into the NFL, the NHL, the NBA, the major leagues, and so on. But what about for kids who play sports in high school? Are athletic scholarships something that parents should focus on, or kids should focus on, or no?
I think that first and foremost, make sure if your child's playing a sports because they like it and it's because it's enjoyable. And so I think if we're getting into the mindset of they're doing this so that they can get a college scholarship, and if they really don't like that sport, don't do this, because truly, like the facts, the statistics out there. So just in the NCAA, so just looking at the NCAA, but you have about 2% of high school athletes who are getting scholarships through NCAA schools. So 2%. So that's just very hard to
number.
Yeah. All these numbers are just, but they're real. These are real numbers. And then also be aware that you don't get scholarships at Division III schools. I guess some people know that, but if you didn't know, it's just Division I and Division II schools that are able and allowed to pass out athletic scholarships.
Okay.
And on average, that award from NCAA schools is around $11,000, $12,000 per year. So that's not going to cover it all.
No.
It's still good money, but just imagine if it's only 2% of all high school athletes, then even if at your student's high school, they're the top athlete in their sport, they still might not get a scholarship to play at a Division I or Division II school. So it's just putting it into perspective. Certainly, like if they have the love of this sport and it's enjoyable for them to go for it, and then maybe there will be a scholarship, but don't put all your eggs in that basket. That's the important thing.
I think there's also for those listening or watching right now who didn't go to college, or they went to college, but they did not have a roommate or somebody they knew down the hall or neighbors that played sports. And we're talking the big sports, like not to say that the ones that aren't on TV aren't important sports, but nevertheless, any NCAA sport puts an ancillary strain on your ability to do well academically because of the amount of time it takes. I mean, you're getting up really early, you've got extra time you've got to put in. So, I mean, it's a job, good luck having a job, I guess, but it's a job, being in athletics and, involving the kids with, talking about having a job, paying for the school and paying for college, and, athletic scholarships might be nice, but it might be that much more difficult to do well in school while you're there. And unless you're, of course, banking on that MBA run. Right. But,
right.
Speaking of money, I've got two sons. They're a little bit young yet, Karsten and Camden, and the older of the two, Karsten, he turns 12, about 6 weeks. But he's only in middle school. So I imagine at some point when I start getting into the weeds with him, or both of them really, I'm going to want to get them involved in this process too, as opposed to just, taking care of it for them. So when it comes to the money part of the college search process, at what point would you think that, for kids that are watching or listening, or even the parents, when should parents start involving their kids in the money process?
Yeah. I mean, and I love that, you have somebody who's almost to that place. My kids aren't quite there yet, but I'm thinking the same things. Our oldest is in 5th grade. So, of course she hears me talk all the time about this. So she's funny. She probably knows more than the average student at this point, but
can have her on the podcast next.
I should have, she would love that. She would take over the whole show. So to your question though, honestly, 7th and 8th grade can be a time to start these conversations, because we are seeing more and more students taking high school classes in middle school or junior high as 7th or 8th graders. So maybe Algebra 1 as an 8th grader. And so you're already in 8th grade starting to have a contribution to that investment that is going to be happening. And by that, I mean, those grades that you earn in those high school classes, even as a 13 or 14-year-old, are going to count on your transcript, on your high school transcript, which is the direct thing that makes up that GPA, that cumulative GPA that you will be applying to colleges with. So from the moment a student's beginning to take a high school class, I really think they should have a basic understanding of, I may be going to college, right? Because to have a 13, 14-year-old decide what their future career is going to be, that's a whole other thing. Nobody's expecting that of them.
It'll change 5 times anyway,
Yeah. And truly, maybe their future career might not need college right away. So, but that's a whole other conversation. But let's just assume that college is most likely going to be in their future. So explain that to them, and that they need to do their very best in all of their classes, but especially the high school credit classes, because that is creating this information for them that can literally equate to dollars, money, and getting into those colleges, right? But for these purposes, money, and helping them. Certainly having them watch this episode is not going to be a good idea, because this is super confusing for adults.
Pretty high level, yeah.
Pretty high level for even people in this world. But you think about college costs money. It's expensive. There's a wide variety of costs for colleges, but we can possibly lower that price if you do your very best in your classes. I think that's
Sure.
a good basic explanation. You're empowering your child by giving them that information, including them in the process. And like you said, Adam, this is an investment and you are making them a part of it, a part of their investment for their future. And that helps in a lot of ways. And, they're more financially literate. I mean, there's all of that. So it's a good thing. And so I'm going to hold you to that. You should start having a conversation pretty soon.
Yeah, pretty soon, especially if they start, it's like the points you're earning right now are counting toward college. And especially for my older guy, Camden, the younger, will do whatever Karsten does. Like basically he's just going to, he follows like on his coattails. He loves his big brother so much. It's ridiculous. But Karsten wants to go to Ohio State so bad, and we're not trying to scare him, but we know it's pretty hard to get in. So it's you gotta put your all into it, and especially if you start taking high school classes in 8th grade. I mean, you maybe have to grow up a little bit sooner than most kids do in that case. Then, well, let's just say you've done all this work, right? And obviously, there's a whole lot more that we haven't talked about today that I'm sure we'll get into on future episodes. But you've gone through all this work, you've gone through all the effort we've discussed today, and then when you hear back from college, let's just say you get your letter back, and the price is still too high. Is there anything you can do about that? Or is it pretty much a lost cause once you've received that letter back from the institution in question that here's what the cost is, it's too much money, toss it in the recycle bin and move on to a new university? Or is that not the case?
Yeah, don't toss it in the recycle bin yet. You hold on to that. Okay. I would say it's not a complete lost cause. So it depends on which colleges you've applied to. So if you have, let's say that you heard back and the money was too much at a private university that you've applied to, and another private university that you applied to was going to offer your student more, then that is when you can kind of ensue this negotiating, so to speak. So it has to be similar colleges. So you cannot have Ohio State and Oberlin and try to get, Ohio State to offer you
very
more.
different.
It doesn't even make sense. The sticker prices are way different, but you get it, right? So it has to be two similar universities. But really, you're dealing with the financial aid office, not the admissions office now. Admissions office is when you're applying and such. Now you've transferred to the financial aid office, and that's who sent you the letter. But an email, a phone call, and the parents can be very much involved with this. That is fair game, because clearly parents typically know a little more about how to speak in these terms. So parents with the student right there can be saying, this university offered us some more. Are you able to match that? And so you can go back a couple times back and forth. They may say no, but it's not going to hurt you in any way if you've asked.
What's the worst that happens? It's no big deal, right?
Yeah, they're certainly not going to raise your price just because you bothered them. That's not happening.
Yeah, right.
So you can go back and forth a couple times. And we've seen this happen really in the past few years. Some of our students at Estrela have gotten a lot more money. So, but I say a lot, don't expect more than a couple $1,000 because that's just, they don't have like the secret money that they can throw at you.
The new vault. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. But then also, Adam, if at any point, especially in these past 2 years with the pandemic, we know families have circumstances that happen, right? Somebody loses a job, somebody ends up in the hospital, somebody dies.
Sure. Yeah.
So that is, if at any time that happens, even if your kid's already in college, even if they're just applying, but they haven't been accepted at the college yet, you stop, you get the information, you get the proof, the termination letter or whatever that shows this happened. You reach out to the financial aid office, you explain your situation, and generally they try to help. Not every school can help, but many will try to help you figure out what you need to have your information switched. So you don't need to wait until you fill out a new FAFSA or a new CSS profile. Okay. Don't do that. Get that information into them soon. But then a pro tip is, don't tell them how much more money you want. Just let them come back with an offer. Yeah. And then sometimes it'll be higher than you thought you wanted. So, but I know that's very special circumstance, not really what we were talking about, but still.
Yeah, but that's you bring up a good point I'd never thought of before. So if, not, and this is horribly morbid to talk about, but it's reality. if you're mid school, right in the middle of the school year, and you lose your husband or wife, and thus the kid loses one of their parents, is it not too much to say, to go to the school and say, hey, here's a death certificate, this is proof, we're going through rough times right now, we don't want to pull our kid from school, what can you do for us? Am I crazy in asking that question?
That is not crazy. No, that's what you should do. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, obviously they don't expect that you're doing it a week after this awful thing happens. They are going to have grace for wait, you
Sure.
and then
That's
come
good.
back. If your student wants to stay at the school, if they're able to go back. And I used to do bereavement counseling. I used to lead grief groups. So I'm also thinking about, like, you're going to want to wait some time for that. That's a whole other thing. But yes, in terms of the money and getting more financial aid, merit or need aid, you can go back and show them the death certificate. And yes, that would be a good thing to do, because
it's good to know. I remember, I've heard stories. I mean, not just in my adult life, but when I was in college, I know at least a couple people who, for whatever reason, whether it be a death in the family or financial hardship of another kind, they were forced to leave school and they didn't want to. And if there's a way that the school can maybe have a little grace, as you put it, that kind of gives you a little bit of a, I don't know, tinge of brightness on humanity, makes you feel a little bit good at considering all that going on in the world today, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I do feel like a lot of what I presented today was a little sad. So yes.
No, I don't think so. I think it's just real,
Yeah.
No, I just think of this factual information. It's good to know. So with that being said, so good segue, we've gone over a ton of information today, and I know, I was going to say I'm sure, but I now know it's impossible to get into every item in detail with every in one podcast episode, obviously. So, but just in case that I missed anything big today, and we will do another one, but in case I missed anything big today, would you have any kind of final words of wisdom for the families, with kids looking to attend college coming in the next year, 2, 3, 4 years or so, at least today?
Yes. Yeah. Some takeaways, right? After all of that, what are the main points? So yes, thank you for giving me a chance to do this, because I feel like we need to debrief here. So really, Adam, I would just say, start out by going to collegedata.com even. And really, if you're listening to this and your child's not even in high school yet, you can start to do this, right? I listed off a few college names today, but maybe you're not interested in any of those. Go to collegedata.com, start to play around with the numbers, see maybe the college that you went to, your alma mater, perhaps see how much they cost, sticker price, list price. And then you can even filter. So there's a filter tool that you can filter by how much need aid is given or how much merit aid is given. So just start to play around with the numbers like that. Yeah. That would be like one thing you can just walk away from and do today. Maybe you want to fill out that practice FAFSA. That's another, word of advice, is maybe just do that now. Federal Student Aid Estimator. You can Google it, or, click on the link that they provide. Sure. So there's that. You could fill that out to get an idea of how much need your family might have. So there's that. Have the talk with your child, unless of course, like they're in third grade. Like I have a son that's in third grade. I'm not going to be having this talk with him right now. But, if you have an 8th grader or a high schooler, have that talk. Start to help them think about how they can take some ownership in this process. And then also have a talk with yourself, I would say. We talked at the very beginning about the emotions of the fear, the guilt. Those are very real feelings. I validate you no matter how you're feeling right now in this. This is very normal for you to feel that way. It's overwhelming, it's stressful, but call those feelings like they are, acknowledge them, and then just, help yourself become empowered and informed to put those feelings in their place. Do not let them take the steering wheel, because you're going to end up in a mess if you do. Because no matter where you're at in this process, you can, like I shared all these things today, you can see that you can become informed. You can become rational. This doesn't have to be so confusing and emotional to make yourself a consumer that makes a good decision for you and your child. So I feel confident that anybody can do this. obviously I help families through it, but I see families who do this on their own as well. So have confidence in yourself and become informed. And that's going to be your biggest tool to help you through this.
I think it takes time. It takes work like anything else in life. If I think it's a huge payoff in the end, if you take the time and you take the effort, at least for me, not, and this is a shameless plug here, and I'm not just saying this, but when the time comes, I will be reaching out to you guys. I have way too much on my plate to try and do all of this myself. But tinkering online, playing with those tools that we'll put in links at the bottom in the YouTube description. Feel free to click on those links, play with them, tinker with them, and maybe do some college searching like you'd search for a car, right? Put your filters in. But thank you so much for coming on today. Like I said, we'll definitely be doing at least one of these per year, if not more, with you and your team, because I think that we can't educate people enough about the very, very quickly rising cost of college and all the different choices and the minutia and how difficult it is to understand it all. So I really appreciate you taking the time to be on, but feel free, for those of you listening or watching, share this episode with your friends and family. And I know that this was a long one, but it's packed with good information. And if all they do is listen to it in the car on the way to or from work, you can get through it on the way to and from work, and you're done. You can listen to it again. If you'd like to discuss your personal situation further when it comes to your kids, planning for college in the future, please reach out to us. I'm also going to put Laura's contact information in the YouTube description below. If you have any interest in talking about college savings or your financial retirement plans, estate plan, obviously feel free to reach out to myself personally. You can do so on our website. You can email us at info@libertaswealth.com. And if you'd like to set up an intro meeting, an intro call, you can head over to our website and set it up via email there as well. But as I always say, I'm losing my voice now, but as I always say, there are thousands and by the way, Laura, you're the one that did all the talking. I'm the one losing my voice. I don't know.
Maybe I should sing. Should I sing now?
No, I don't know.
Sing us out.
But there's thousands and thousands, obviously, of podcasts out there, and you chose to give ours a listen today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe on both iTunes and YouTube. And remember, you can sign up at libertaswealth.com to not only get these updates, but you can also get our other screencast videos, articles delivered directly to your email inbox whenever they're distributed. Feel free to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Libertas Wealth. I'm on Twitter at Adam Koch and on Instagram at Financial Surgeon. So thank you so much once again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
My pleasure. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Cash Podcast with your financial surgeon, Adam Koch. To see any charts or images that were mentioned in this show, or to check out additional articles, videos, and other educational resources, head over to libertaswealth.com.